Welcome to the Class Report Insights discussion today. My name is Jared Peterson. I'm excited to have you here today, and we're going to talk about our recent report on enterprise imaging. And I'm joined today by my colleague, Monique Rasband. Welcome, Monique. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Jared. I'm excited to talk about this report.
Yeah. So, we've done a lot of imaging reports, and you're our resident guru on imaging, and it's been great to work with you over the years. So this report on enterprise imaging, just share a little bit why we chose to do this report and what's a little bit different that we're doing in this report that we haven't done in some of our past reports.
Yeah, great question. So this report is always very fun, that about the time we're publishing, providers come back and say, thanks for the report, when will you publish the next one? So I can't say that we have a choice in continuing to publish, which is a great thing. There's always a need. One thing that is different about this report, we started out talking and scoping adoption and talking about the market was slower to adopt. And then COVID happened, and that seemed to naturally speed things up, where providers were short-staffed. They were looking at how do we get images to the right patients at the right time, for the right patients at the right time, and even with image exchange. So with staffing shortages and people not wanting to go in to burn that disc, which we've all wondered why we're doing that for so long, that changed the dynamic. And so it gave it a little kick in the pants. And so we saw things speed up. So what we started with scoping on adoption turned into even deeper. And now the adoption is moving forward, and providers were knocking on the door saying, how do we add? How do we bring this department in the fold? What are best practices? And so naturally the report just made sense, even though we were planning to scope.
Awesome, great. So just for those who are maybe new to some of our reports, when you define enterprise imaging, what are we talking about? We're not talking about just PACS, right? So let's just share quickly, if you would, what is our definition of enterprise imaging?
Absolutely. And I should also say it's not our definition, which is even better, that the providers came up with this definition at one of our previous summits, and we wrestled over it. So there are many pieces that make up enterprise imaging. And I also want to say we don't measure every part. So this is definitely a step in the right direction and the core. So there are many things that are not measured. The core of this report is VNA and Universal Viewer, and not just simply archiving or viewing images. So the criteria for this report, in order for us to go a step deeper with providers and engage and ask those questions, we wanted to reach out to those that are more adopted, and VNA would be pulling images from multiple PACS, or just from the modality, but in 2 or more service lines. Also validating that vendors were able to connect with other vendors. So we did want to validate that there was interoperability. Similar on the viewer side. On the viewer side, Universal Viewer, we did talk to people that are using referential as well as diagnostic, or one or the other. That's spelled out in the report. So providers looking for one or the other would be able to get the report and read more there. And also we wanted to make sure we validated that vendors could be interoperable with other vendors. Also, we talk about EMR integration, which is very critical when you think Universal Viewer, and again, 2 or more service lines. So in past reports and early, it was more radiology focused, and then we saw cardiology as a natural expansion. And now it's really fun when we're validating some of these vendors that are doing 3, 4 service lines, and then other providers, 20 plus service lines that we've validated and talked to. So we're in a great place. It's fun to see the movement and see the energy in the market.
That's great. So one of the things, we're going to reserve kind of the results
the secret sauce.
So for market share and things like that, we're going to encourage folks to go read the report to get that information. But there's one piece or call Monique. There's one piece of the report that we want to share today a little bit, and it really centers around relationships and the importance of relationships. So we have a chart in the report that speaks to long-term plans. So these solutions being part of long-term plans. And folks can take a look at that chart and see that data and encourage them to go learn more in the report. But I wanted you to take a couple of minutes and just talk about the importance of relationships in this space.
Absolutely.
And what you've seen and some of the things that are so critical when it comes to relationships with the vendors with their customers.
Absolutely. So enterprise imaging is a journey. And so oftentimes I love providers, as you know, I love speaking with all of you. And they say, oh, next year when we talk, this and this is going to happen. And I think, oh, I really hope it does, but it's not, unfortunately, purchase something, sign a contract, implement, and the way you go with enterprise imaging. It is a journey. And so relationship and the vendor critically understand. It's so critical for them to understand what the provider's goals are. And on the provider side, there's also responsibility of sharing roadmap, discussing with the vendor. So when I say relationships and you bring that up, it's not just on one side. This is not vendor focused only. It really is those two teams working together. And then take it a layer deeper on the provider side. We talked about this. What are one of the best practices that you got in ROI? And we had CIOs and high-level IT people say, it is teamwork with the clinicians. And then we had department heads, department leads saying, it is the relationship with IT, with the vendor. So it's not just relationship vendor focused, although of course, when the vendors are very focused on relationships and they are sharing that culture, it's very easy for the providers to get on board and then everyone being on the same page. So when it comes to long-term plans, that really is one of the pieces for success that we see on all sides.
Great.
And especially for expansion and growth, which is what we all want.
Great.
We're all getting older, so we need this to speed up.
Yeah. Well, Monique,
it has to be solved by the time I retire.
Yeah. Hopefully, right?
Yes, yes.
Well, Monique, thanks for taking a few minutes today and just giving us some highlights into this report.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us for a few minutes. If you'd like to read this report and see some of the data that Monique referenced, feel free to visit the website, classresearch.com, and access this report. If you have any questions about enterprise imaging or anything imaging related, feel free to reach out to us we'd be happy to help answer any questions you might have.
Yeah, thank you so much. Look forward to speaking with you all soon. Take care.